Is Marcus going to bring about a new plant era? Welcome back to Cocky Gachas, and in this video we're going to be taking a first look at Marcus's kit. Of course, the multipliers have not been released, but we do know her role right now, and she is in fact a DPS unit. Now of course everyone knows that historically Jessica has been a powerhouse in our plant department. She is the plant queen, right? But with Marcus's release, maybe she is going to change things, and from the looks of her kit, I can see it is rather promising, albeit it's quite speculative without the multipliers. So going into Marcus's translated kit, credits to Chunxi. I've also verified it since I understand Chinese, and this seems to be rather accurate. Marcus is a plant afflictor 6-star mentor DPS. Of course, Jessica is reality DPS, but in my opinion, this game itself, mentor versus reality DPS, there is not much difference. More of the differences lie in the unit themselves as well as their afflictors. So from this end, I will see the two of them being in competing roles. Now moving on to her insight. Insight 1 is already very strong. Max Eureka +1 at the start of the turn. If there are no enemies with annotation, give one enemy annotation with priority on the boss enemy. At the start of the turn, if a certain number of Eureka is reached, spend as much Eureka as possible to increase the level of Marcus's incantation. So annotation is a negative status that when enemies have this annotation, right, they are going to be increasing Marcus's Eureka when they act. So instead of you acting, increasing Eureka, it's going to be on the unit that is with annotation acting to gain you Eureka. So this is not exactly, of course, the best, because sometimes the boss enemy usually have like 1 AP, so you're not going to gain that much Eureka from that sense. But the most important thing also is to deduce how many Eureka she's going to have. And for default characters, usually it is 5 looking at 37. So with max Eureka +1, that is going to be 6 for Marcus. And also, if a certain number of Eureka is reached, right, you are going to spend this. So from the description wise, I'm going to speculate that it is roughly 3 or 4 Eureka at the start of the round, and you're going to spend it. Because at 6 Eureka, right, if you were to spend 6 Eureka, it will, I don't think you have that many incantations to actually level up. So I think more realistically, it should be 3 or 4. When it's being reached, it's going to upgrade the incantations. Already shows promise as a DPS, because usually the multipliers for the 2 rank and 3 rank cards are going to be so much higher, right, compared to 1 rank card. So having the ability to use such cards with ease is going to mean a lot for her. And also annotation is negative status, which also brings about Blasphemy of Night uptime, which is a huge part when it comes to DPS, because BON is such a strong side cube, like I mentioned multiple times. Going into her I2, increase attack when entering battle, and this is going to be quite standard for DPS. I3 at the start of the battle and each turn increase Eureka. So I'm going to assume this is going to be 1. Of course, it might change, right? If it's Eureka 2, it's pretty strong. Okay, so Eureka 1, I'm just going to assume she's not going to be super overpowered, hopefully. And also, if a certain number of allies with plant type, spirit type, or intellect afflictors are reached, enter intensive reading. If this is no longer true, dispel intensive reading. So this already shows that she is someone that you want to build with a relatively fixed roster, right? Primarily with a full plant team or inclusion of a minimum of intellect units. After all, there are not that many good ones, and the notable one is going to be 6. So this rule should be with 6 in mind, and it's similar to how Gertian wants to play in a fixed team as well. So this is similar to that. And also for intensive reading, it is very strong. When using rank 2 plus incantations, increase Muxi, and it doesn't state how many, but I'm going to assume it's going to be 1. And this already plays in with her kit in I1, right, that makes it such that Eureka can be translated into upgrades for incantation. So this plays very well. This also means that she is a Muxi generator, and her ultimate, if it's strong and you are able to cycle it well, it's going to be quite OP. So this is outside of multipliers, of course. Now we're going into her skills. We're going to see S1. S1 is going to be intensive reading lesson. So for this, it's a single mental attack. This attack enjoys increased penetration rate. Reminds me a bit of like the Necromancer skill 1 also. So this is similar, just attack without multipliers, of course, as of this moment. S2 in the Lamplight. So in the Lamplight, mass mental attack to 2 enemies and inflict weakness. Damage dealt increased to enemies with annotation. So for here, weakness is basically a defensive skill with stack base. So if you inflict weakness on your opponent, it is going to make them deal 25% less damage per time they attack, right? So if the stack base is going to be reduced, it's not duration based. Not as OP, but still strong and helps with plant teams. In general, plant teams are more squishy, so it does help a bit from that aspect. And lastly, we have her ultimate, look further. Mass mental attack to all enemies damage dealt increased to enemies with annotation, increased Eureka, enter preparation marker status. And for preparation marker status, at the start of the next turn, you're going to generate 1 corresponding level of intensive reading lesson incantation. So I think this ultimate is really strong because first you think about it, mass mental attack to all enemies is equivalent to what Jessica does from the ultimate standpoint, and also it deals increased damage to those enemies with annotation. So for boss maps itself, you are going to be able to do extra damage to the boss, so playing in a bit to the Raid's perspective already, and also it increases her Eureka. So what it plays in here is that when she increases Eureka, right, you are more likely to reach a certain level of Eureka at the start of the next round, hence triggering the increase of your Marcus card's incantation based on how many Eureka you have. So normally I would say that this isn't as good because it depends on whether you have the Marcus card, but guess what? It prepares you with a free Marcus card because preparation Marcus status is going to be at the next round. You're going to have a intensive reading lesson incantation, so you always have something to upgrade. You are not going to be afraid of that, and also plays in more from a DPS aspect, right? A lot of times DPS are restricted by the number of DPS cards they have, hence making them not as effective. But with Marcus, you're able to generate this similar to Spatodier, which is also why I say Spatodier is quite good from this aspect that is kind of underrated. And here it does mention generate 1 corresponding level. However, Ultimate only have level 1, so I'm not too sure what it corresponds to. We have to wait for the detailed descriptions when Marcus is out to know further whether this is going to be even more OP, right? Level 1 is already very good. If it can generate level 2, level 3, I mean, that is going to be quite bastard. So yeah, I do think that from this end, it is going to be a level 1 intensive reading lesson card. Now, after reading Marcus's initial kit, right, just from this, I can tell that Marcus is going to be quite a relevant DPS. Of course, we do not know the multipliers. We're not sure if she's going to deal as much damage as Jessica, but from this end, I can see a new type of plant team forming, right, that one without Jessica, because previously you always want Jessica. There is no other hyper carry from that sense, right? Groovis isn't a straight up hyper carry from a damage standpoint, but Marcus seems like she's hugely focused around this, albeit she does have some restrictions when it comes to team building. You probably want for a 3-man team to always plan her with like Sotheby as a healer, because she's going to have poison and it's going to ensure Blasphemous Knight uptime. Otherwise, you can try going with Groovis, and that is also going to help with the sustain, but you need to find a third unit to complement to ensure that the Blasphemous Knight uptime is going to be there to compete with Jessica. And 6 comes to mind, although 6 isn't exactly the most premier choice you want to put for a 3-man team, given the fact that debuffs are generally better. However, there is no plant type debuffer as of now, which makes it a bit harder to look for that sub DPS slot with Marcus. So maybe the entire team building will also play into the fact whether Marcus is going to be super premier. As for Isolde, you probably don't want to put her with Marcus because she buffs reality DPS teams and in general doesn't really pair well with Marcus despite being a spirit type unit. So in 4-man team, I'm going to expect more of teams such as 6, 2 Fairy, probably Groovis if you can, or you can just straight up use Beacon, although you don't get the reality defense bonus, right, because you're mental DPS, but Beacon is still strong enough that probably you can still use her, right, just for herself. And also, alternatively, maybe you can put Marcus plus the Jessica together, although I am not sure how effective this is going to be, but this is just my general thoughts after looking at Marcus's initial kit release. Now with that said, Marcus is in fact in the lower half of 1.7, so it's quite some time away. If you want to see the units before them and whether I think that they are worth pulling for, definitely check out this video on the updated free-to-play Saving Banner guide. I'll see you guys over there. This is Corky Gachas, signing off.